established rich coming right back at you. And today, we're talking about the latest chapter in one of the most petty and never-ending wars in hip-hop. This time it involves Rick Ross, 50 Cent, and Uncle Murda deciding to put himself in the conversation. Now, this whole thing started after news broke that 50 Cent was being sued by a former employee. According to reports, the lawsuit has claims of harassment, emotional distress, and pressure to participate in questionable financial activities due to a bankruptcy. 50's legal team has denied the claims completely and called the woman a disgruntled former employee. So right now, these are allegations, not facts. But the internet does what it always does. The second 50 Cent's name started trending, people who've been waiting to take shots came out the woodwork. And that is where Uncle Murda decided to step in like he's the defensive coordinator for G-Unit. He jumped online and started throwing shots at Rick Ross by posting the old correctional officer footage again.
AKA Curtis Jackson, is responding through his lawyer to a lawsuit filed against him by a woman who worked with the music mogul for about 12 years. Here are some of the highlights of the lawsuit. Monique Mayers claims she refused to hide property in her own name to conceal Jackson's connection to a transaction during his bankruptcy-related reporting period. She also says she would not file a false police report accusing Jackson's driver and bodyguard of stealing Jackson's vehicle and approximately $600,000 in cash. Because of that, Mayers says she was fired in March of 2019 without cause and without severance. Now, there's a lot more in this 67-page lawsuit, including text messages, phone records, that Mayers says prove she was harassed and endured emotional distress and psychological injury. 50 Cent's attorney responded, though, to those allegations, calling Mayers a disgruntled former employee.
This is why I gotta keep it real. Uncle Murda ain't have nothing to do with this. This was a lawsuit involving 50 Cent. But because of loyalty, or maybe because of opportunity, Uncle Murda decided to put himself in a beef that has been going on for over a decade. And the problem with that is when you throw rocks at somebody who's on a different level than you, you better be ready for whatever comes back. Because Rick Ross did not just respond, he went for blood. Now, before we even get into Ross's response, let's talk about why this whole correctional officer angle don't hit the way it used to. Back during the prime of the 50 Cent versus Rick Ross war, that was a nuclear weapon. Back then, people really felt like it destroyed Rick Ross's image. They felt like it exposed him. They felt like it took away from the persona he created. But we are years past that now. Rick Ross survived that hit, built multiple businesses, built an empire, built the brand, and kept moving forward. So every time somebody brings it up now, it feels more like a replay than a devastating revelation. And that is why Rick Ross responded the way he did. He basically looked at Uncle Murda and said, "Who are you to even be speaking to me?" Now, one thing about Rick Ross, whether you like him or not, he knows how to humiliate people with words. He knows how to make you feel small without even sounding mad. And when he said Uncle Murda could get a job washing the algae off his yacht, that wasn't just an insult. That was basically Ross reminding him of the difference in status.
Look, we ain't doing that, but look, just for the ones that, all the people that want to know the details on what my plane is, it's the G550 with the G600 interior. The color, the customization was an extra $500,000 for no reason. And what color it is, that's that Uncle Murda black right there. And not his shade of forehead. That cheap Uncle Murda got. I don't know what's going on, but I said I need that. I need that Uncle Murda cheap. There go that Uncle Murda.
You can tell, Rick Ross looks at Uncle Murda like a small fish trying to swim with sharks. Because let's be honest here, when people talk about success in hip-hop, when people talk about business, when people talk about catalogs, careers, brands, Rick Ross and Uncle Murda are not even in the same conversation. That's not disrespect, that's just reality. Rick Ross built Maybach Music, created multiple stars, built multiple businesses, and turned himself into a corporate brand. Uncle Murda, fair or unfair, is mostly viewed as a guy connected to 50 Cent. And a lot of people online look at him as the new version of Tony Yayo, loyal to the boss, always ready to defend the boss, but never really breaking through with his own major force. And I know that stings. I know it has to, because as an artist, you never want to feel like people see you as somebody else's sidekick. So when Rick Ross starts talking about boats, money, and saying your kids could work for him one day, he is not just insulting you. He's attacking your position in the game. Now, do I think Rick Ross went too far bringing up family? Yeah, probably. Because once you start talking about somebody's kids, the energy changes. But at the same time, Uncle Murda decided to put himself in this. Nobody forced him to jump out there and defend 50 Cent. He made that decision himself. And this is the thing about 50 Cent. 50 has built an entire career of warfare, trolling, and public humiliation. People who align themselves with him often end up playing that same game, whether they ready for it or not. The difference is, 50 Cent has the status, the power, and the history to survive most of these battles. Other people around him don't have that same armor. And that is why this whole thing feels different for Uncle Murda. To him, this is loyalty. To a lot of the public, it looks like a man desperately trying to defend somebody more powerful than him. Now let's talk about the real relationship between 50 Cent and Rick Ross. Because honestly, these two have been disrespecting each other so long that it feels like it's part of their public identities. At this point, every new controversy feels like another round in a never-ending story. Sometimes it feels real, sometimes it feels strategic, and sometimes it feels like both. Because whether people want to admit it or not, this type of drama keeps both of their names alive online. Every time they take shots, the internet lights up again. But what makes this different is that this started from an actual lawsuit. This isn't just music beef for jokes. This is something that could have real consequences for 50 Cent. And that is why I think Uncle Murda should have stayed out of it. Because when somebody is dealing with a real case, throwing old memes and old insults into the mix just makes it look like a distraction or a deflection. And honestly, it also makes him look emotional. It looked like he couldn't wait to defend 50 Cent once Rick Ross' name came up. Now let me say this too, because this is important. People love to mock Rick Ross for his correctional officer past, but they also ignore how hard it is to survive something like that publicly and still win. Most rappers would have been finished. Most people would have never recovered from that type of exposure. But Rick Ross kept building, kept making hits, kept expanding his business, and eventually moved on. That don't mean people forget. It just means success has a way of making people care less over time. And that is really what this whole argument comes down to. Uncle Murda is throwing out old character attacks, while Rick Ross is responding from a position of current success. Those are two different type of weapons. One is saying, remember what you used to be? The other one is saying, look at what I am now. And in today's culture, people tend to respect the money, the status, and the success more than the old internet jokes. That's just the truth. At the end of the day, this whole situation feels like another example of how loyalty can sometimes make people jump into battles that are bigger than them. Uncle Murda was trying to defend 50, but in doing that, he basically put himself in position to be publicly embarrassed by somebody who operates on a completely different level. And whether people like Ross or not, the man knows how to turn an insult into a public execution. He don't just respond. He makes you feel like you shouldn't have spoken in the first place. But hey, that's just my opinion. What's yours? Like, comment, subscribe, establish rich. I'll be back with another one. Peace.